This is Berkeley after all. Um, I don't think there's a lot of difference between them. I think the women have to be more persistent. They've had to overcome more hurdles along the way. So I would say that maybe on average they tend to be better students. They're here because they want to learn. They're very serious about using what they've learned in their future career.
The differences that I see are the difference that they are related with the nature of a male and a female. In some aspects, males are more practical because they have used to play with different toys and have different activities that train specific skills of our personalities that they fit better with engineering. But at the same time, there are also specific skills that women have due to the way that they have been educated and live, that also make them possibly better engineers.
There have been a lot of studies on this, and I think the women are voting with their feet. And the fact that there are so many women in environmental engineering and biomedical engineering and engineering that is more closely associated with the human condition is the number one message, is that women seem to gravitate towards disciplines within engineering that they can see some condition where they're going to improve the world. And there's the old joke about mechanical engineers versus civil engineers. The civil engineers build the buildings and mechanical engineers shoot them down. And I think there's some reality to the types of projects that mechanical engineers work on, and need not be, but too often they are projects that don't show how engineering benefits the human condition.
Well, as history. I mean, I'll speak from the Australian perspective, but as late as the 1970s, there was still an expectation in the public sector in Australia that you could not retain your job after you were married. That was true for teachers through to the 70s. So our legislation in some places around the world, I can't speak to the US, has led, I mean, that's a long legacy. People who were getting married in the 1970s are in their 50s now, and that's really winnowed down the potential range of women who could have taken on engineering roles and kept them on.
I think it's a patriarchal field that is oriented toward teaching men and not toward teaching women. And so men, it's not malicious or anything like that, but men teach people the way that they've learned to be taught. So they teach with spatial jargon and spatial understanding that women may not understand. So there are two solutions to that. One is to have more female teachers, but that's not the only solution. The other is to teach men how to teach women.
We have to support the female students, make them feel more confident and that they have the capabilities to be good engineers, and also through the education process at different levels, starting even from primary school, to transfer this message to the families and to the people that women should have exactly the same opportunities to study in engineering as men.
When I transferred into engineering, I had no idea that there weren't any women in the field. I really didn't have a clue until I worked into this classroom of 50 students, all men, a freshman design class, and the instructor actually said this when I walked into the room: "Okay guys, we can't tell any dirty jokes this semester." And that was my welcome on my first day of class in engineering. And so it was a much different environment then. And so this study that I helped work on with the National Academy of Engineering has looked at those changes over time, and just flipping through some of the changes of women in engineering and looking at what are the institutional barriers and what are still active elements of discrimination. Some of those have changed and some of those haven't. So one thing that hasn't changed is the general population does have gender stereotypes. And both men and women discriminate against women.
To be honest, there's no balance. I spend a significant portion of my waking hours working. I sometimes joke with people, they ask if I have pets, and I said, well, if I had a pet, the pet would be dead, because, I just don't have time to deal with very much outside of work. Even plants, sometimes they don't survive either.
Some people ask how you balance a career with a social life and your professional life. I see it the other way. I see that I could not have been successful without a family.
The way that I balance my time out is I rely very strongly on my husband and my dog to keep me sane, and if I'm working too much like a maniac, I usually get told, and that dog needs a good long walk every day, no matter what else I think I've got on my agenda.
I think it totally did. My grandfather was an engineer. My dad was an engineer. I mean, I think it does have a lot to do with, kind of looking up to the people in your family. And, my sister's a chemist. I mean, so we're all kind of in that technical field of, being more analytical, and maybe it's genetics. Maybe it's because, they went into that field because they were more steered towards the analytical side, and the technical side were, and so I don't know, but yeah, it's the example. So, and I think it's maybe awareness too, because if you don't know what an engineer does, I mean, how would you want to be an engineer? I mean, because if my dad wasn't an engineer, I don't think I would even know really what engineering was all about.
I would say that definitely. Right now, our contract is with the military, and with the military, they are a very, male-based organization. And so it has taken a lot for me to be accepted by our customer community as somebody that has the background and the knowledge that it takes to succeed. And so that is something that I am still working right now to establish that credibility with our customers.
I don't think anyone's called me sweetheart or honey, and maybe when I just started out, and if that had happened, I'd have just gone, oh, get over it. What does happen here a lot here at Berkeley is that students will either assume I'm a man, so I've got some advisees who've been writing to Mr. Thompson, which is pretty funny, or who will address me as Mrs. rather than Doctor or Professor, which I suspect they wouldn't do to my male colleagues, but it's a tiny thing.
But I would say, just speaking to young men and young women who are either in this profession or considering it, it's really, in my experience, about the individual and what you can bring and what you want to get out of the experience and the training, either challenging yourself or making a broad impact on the world around you, a sustainable long-term impact, or being part of a team, or using your individual contributor skills to make a difference. I would say just really think about not just what your passion is, but what you owe to the world around you, and think about that, I guess, when there's times of frustration or times that you're questioning yourself, and know that we all go through those times, and in the end it's what makes us more authentic and also more impactful.
I think I need to say that I really have not found being a woman at almost any point in my career to be an impediment. There are occasions when I could look to certain incidences and think, oh gee, was that gender? But there's nothing where I've really thought, oh gee, that was sexism, that just got me.
If you can't be yourself over a long period of time, that can be stressful. So you don't want to be in a position that you're always having to put on some other persona, dress differently than you really want to dress. And so find an environment where you can be yourself and express yourself.
The only thing that I would like to address is that it's wonderful to have women in engineering. It makes our lives better.